A 12-year-old girl from China won a world championship medal in swimming. In most countries, people would call her a prodigy, a miracle. But in China, she is a creature of a cold government system. This system has one goal: to win gold medals. It sacrifices childhood, it crushes dreams, it only cares about the medal count. The story of the swimmer, Yu Zidi, is not a happy one. It reveals a program that plucks children from their families when they're as young as 4. They're taught to handle immense hardship, an ideal known as eating bitterness. For parents, sending their child to a sports school is a desperate lottery ticket, a chance for their family to escape crushing poverty. But for every child who becomes a champion, thousands are cast aside, left with shattered bodies and hollow futures. This is not just about sports. It is a factory where childhood is the raw materials for medals. This is the true price of gold. What happens when a child doesn't just dream of greatness, but is brutally engineered for it from the age of 6? A star is made. At the 2025 World Swimming Championships, the athletes were the best on the planet, seasoned professionals in their physical prime. But amidst these titans, a shockwave rippled through the crowd, caused by a 12-year-old girl named Yu Zidi. She was racing against women 10 years her senior, and she wasn't just keeping up, she was dominating. Yu was the youngest athlete at the entire event. She helped her team win a bronze medal in a relay race, making her the youngest medalist in the history of the championships. But that was just the beginning. In her individual races, she was breathtaking. She finished 4th in 3 different events, missing 3 separate medals by less than 1 second combined. Think about that. She came that close to a podium sweep in the sport's most grueling events. Her times weren't just good for a 12-year-old, they were among the fastest in the world. But Yu Zidi wasn't just fast, she was manufactured to be. This wasn't a happy accident, it was a design. When asked if she was a genius, her answer was chillingly simple. It's all the result of hard training, she said. That one sentence tells the whole story. Her journey began when she was 6. A coach saw her at a water park and plugged her for the machine. 6 years later, she's a world medalist. This is not a story of natural talent, it's a story of what happens when a child is fed into China's sports machine. Her success sent tremors through the sport. Coaches from other countries were stunned. One German coach called it unbelievably questionable, stating she was far too early to compete at this level. Critics argue that such intense pressure on a developing body can lead to permanent injury and psychological burnout. The leaders of world swimming admitted their shock, saying they never imagined a 12-year-old girl would swim like that. They had rules to prevent children from competing too young, but they assumed no child could ever swim fast enough to qualify. They were wrong. Yu Zidi proved that China's system can produce champions faster than anyone thought possible. Now, the world is arguing, is this brilliant coaching, or is it child exploitation? The plan for the machine. Athletes like Yu Zidi do not just appear, they're forged by a giant system run by the government, a factory for champions. The blueprint for the system was imported from the Soviet Union in the 1950s. This model was adopted under Mao Zedong, who saw international sporting victory as a way to prove the superiority of the communist system. The initial goal was to improve the nation's health, but its true purpose was to project China's strength onto the world stage. Today, that system is a vast network of around 3,000 state-run sports schools, training approximately 400,000 children. That's nearly 500,000 childhoods sacrificed to an assembly line. The process begins disturbingly early. Scouts descend upon elementary schools to find children with specific physical traits. These scouts function like agents for the state, clinically assessing children's bodies for their potential to be molded into champions. For swimming, they seek out tall children with large hands and feet, sometimes selecting them at just 4 or 5 years old. They approach the parents and make an offer a desperate family cannot refuse. Once a child is selected, the state takes control. The government pays for their schooling, housing, food, and coaching. In return, the child's life is stripped down to a single, brutal purpose: to win gold medals for China. The government is transparent about this, focusing on sports like swimming, diving, and gymnastics because they offer the most medals. This is not just about national pride, it is about profit. The government aims to grow the sports industry to a value of nearly $700 billion. The system is driven by politics and money, and the state will continue to pour billions into this machine, no matter the human toll. You've seen how the machine operates. Now, it's time to enter its core, where suffering is not the price of success, but the method itself. Made by eating bitterness. You've heard of hard training, but what if I told you China's version has a name that means to eat bitterness? For these children, it is not a phrase, it's their entire existence. It is based on a concept called Qi-Ku, which is deeply ingrained in Chinese culture. It teaches that suffering is not just necessary for success, but a virtue in itself, that one must embrace pain and relentless work to achieve greatness. For these young swimmers, eating bitterness is life. The air in their training halls is thick with the smell of chlorine and the unceasing shouts of coaches, creating an atmosphere of suffocating pressure. Their days are brutally rigid. A typical day starts with a 2-hour swim before sunrise. After a few hours of classes, it's back to training for an hour of land-based exercises, followed by another 2-hour swim. This can total up to 10 hours of training every single day. The physical toll is crushing. One of China's first Olympic swimmers recalled swimming up to 20,000 meters daily, the equivalent of swimming the English Channel and back. There are no real weekends. A Sunday might still involve a 2-hour swim. The methods are harsh. Workouts involve swimming punishing distances repeatedly. Fail to meet the time, and you do it again. Former athletes report that coaches would beat children with kickboards for making making a mistake. The system is designed to shatter a child's spirit and rebuild them into a machine, forcing them to repeat movements thousands of times. One former athlete described jumping into the pool hundreds of times in a row simply to perfect his dive. The coaches wield absolute power. Their word is law. This ideal of eating bitterness is the tool used to control the athletes' minds, framing what looks like cruelty as a noble sacrifice for the nation. When a 12-year-old girl attributes her success to hard training, she's not just being humble, she's echoing the core tenet of the brutal system that forged her. But pain alone isn't what drives this machine. The fuel is something far more powerful and far more desperate. Fueled by poverty. The government claims the goal is national glory, but the system's true engine is poverty. For many families, especially in China's rural provinces, the sports school is the only escape. A government scout appears, offering to cover everything for your child: food, housing, and elite training. For a family in poverty, this offer is almost impossible to refuse. This creates a tragic bargain. The family gives the state their child, and the state gives the family a chance to escape generations of hardship. They face a heartbreaking choice: a future of low-wage labor for their child, or state-funded life that offers a glimmer of hope for fame and fortune. This is amplified by Chinese culture, where an individual's success is the family's success. A gold medal doesn't just transform the athlete's life, it can lift their parents and siblings, providing new homes, jobs, and status. Consider Quan Hongchan, a 14-year-old diver at the Tokyo Olympics. After winning gold, she wept, explaining she competed to earn money for her mother's desperate medical needs. Her motivation wasn't fame, it was family survival. For these families, it's not a sports dream, it's a gamble for survival, and the cost is a child's future. This creates a bargain between family and state. The state funds the children, and in return, the athletes must repay the nation with medals. The family's desperation for a better life aligns perfectly with the government's hunger for glory. That is why the system endures, even though the vast majority are broken by it. Everyone knows only a handful of the 400,000 children in these schools will ever become champions. But for a poor family, the promise of free food and shelter is a lifeline. That tiny chance at gold is a lottery ticket, a shot at a life they can never otherwise attain. We've seen what the system produces. Now, meet those it destroys. The human cost. The Chinese sports system is a factory that produces more than just medals. It produces shattered human beings. For every single champion, thousands of children are cast aside, not just forgotten, but discarded like worn-out tools. Broken bodies, abandoned dreams, they're left with wrecked bodies and wounded minds. The training is a recipe for injury. Pushing children to their absolute limits before their bodies are fully developed leads to chronic, debilitating pain. Gymnasts suffer from lifelong back and joint problems, while divers endure repeated concussions from striking the water thousands of times. Most athletes in this system are forced to retire in their early 20s. Their bodies completely worn out. But the physical damage is only half the torment. Imagine being a child torn from your family and placed in an institution where your only value is your performance. The authoritarian coaches, the constant fear of punishment, and the profound loneliness can inflict deep psychological wounds. Studies have shown that many Chinese athletes suffer from severe depression and anxiety. And what happens when their short, brutal careers are over? This is the system's greatest and most cruel failure. Because of the singular focus on training, their education is neglected. One newspaper estimated that a staggering 80% of retired athletes are jobless, living in poverty with chronic health issues. Each year, around 3,000 athletes are cut from the system. Nearly half of them cannot find work. They leave with no job experience and an education that often stopped at the elementary level, utterly unprepared for life outside the sports bubble. The story of Zhang Shangwu is a haunting cautionary tale. A former gymnastics champion, he was forced to retire at 18 due to injury. With no education and his dreams destroyed, he ended up homeless, begging on the streets just to survive. The government has programs to help retired athletes, but they primarily benefit the superstars who won medals. Those chosen few are given comfortable jobs as coaches or officials. For the rest, there's nothing. They sacrifice their childhoods and failed to win the grand prize. They are the disposable parts of the machine, a heartbreaking reminder of the true human cost of all those medals. You've heard the horror stories. After everything you've heard, the final question remains: will China change course? Or is this just the beginning of something even more extreme? Is the system changing? China is a dominant force in swimming because of a cold, cruel, and effective system that turns children into champions. The story of Uzidi is proof of its chilling efficacy, but this success is forged on the suffering of children. It is a system that devours its young athletes, leaving most with nothing but broken bodies and empty futures. The real question is, how long can this last? As China grows more prosperous, will parents still be willing to risk their only child in this heartless system? There are whispers of reform. Some are advocating for athletes to receive a real education alongside their training, but for now, the machine grinds on, unchanged. When we see a 12-year-old on a podium, we should not just see a star, we should see the one who survived. And we must remember the thousands who did not. We should ask if a system that sacrifices a child for a chance at gold is something to be celebrated or something to condemn. Because the real problem is not that China is winning, it's the human price they're willing to pay.